It was a bitterly cold evening, the kind of winter night when the wind cut straight through coats and scarves and made people wish they were home instead of waiting at a bus stop. The streets were slick with half-melted snow, streetlights glowing. In the foggy air, Daniel pulled his jacket tighter as he glanced at the empty road where the bus was supposed to appear. He worked long shifts at the auto shop, hands often raw from grease and cold steel, and he had just finished another grueling day. He didn't mind hard work. His father had raised him to believe that work was dignity. But the weariness sometimes settled heavy in his bones. He shifted from foot to foot, blowing into his cupped hands, trying to warm them while telling himself the bus had to come soon. Asterisk. That's when he noticed her. A woman stood a few feet away from him, shivering so badly her shoulders shook. She wasn't dressed for weather like this. A thin blouse, no gloves, hair pinned up neatly in a bun, but with little strands coming loose and fluttering in the wind. She hugged herself tightly, as if that alone could keep her warm. Her face was pale, but her posture was proud. Chin tilted slightly up, like someone used to holding her own in any room. Yet now, she looked vulnerable, and Daniel's heart tugged. Asterisk, he hesitated at first. He didn't know her. For all he knew, she might turn away or even be offended if he offered. But then another gust of icy wind hit, and she hugged herself harder, clearly miserable. He couldn't stand there pretending not to see. Without overthinking, he stepped closer, shrugging. Out of his jacket, "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "You look like you need this more than me." Asterisk, she blinked, startled. Her eyes were striking, sharp yet tired, as if they had seen more than most people could imagine. For a moment she didn't respond, almost suspicious. Then she said softly, "I can't take your jacket. You'll freeze." Asterisk, Daniel chuckled a little, brushing it off. "I'm used to the cold. Besides, I've got layers. You look like you're turning into ice." He draped the jacket gently over her shoulders before she could protest further. It was oversized on her, but the warmth spread quickly, and she pulled it tighter around herself, almost instinctively. For the first time, he saw the faintest smile touch her lips. Asterisk, "Thank you," she whispered, voice almost carried away by the wind. Asterisk, "No problem," Daniel replied. "I wouldn't feel right standing here while you shiver." He stepped back, rubbing his own arms to stay warm, trying not to think about how biting the air felt now without his coat. Asterisk. The woman studied him for a moment as if trying to figure him out. She was used to people recognizing her, adjusting their behavior around her. But he seemed oblivious. That was unusual. She thought of telling him her name, but something about the simplicity of the moment stopped her. It felt good, almost refreshing, to just be seen as another person at a bus stop rather than who she was in the corporate world. Asterisk, the bus finally arrived, screeching to a halt. Daniel gestured for her to go first, and she nodded politely, climbing aboard. He followed, choosing a seat near the back, while she sat across the aisle. The bus was half empty, just a handful of exhausted workers and students. The hum of the engine and the rattle of the windows filled the silence. Daniel leaned back, trying to warm his hands by rubbing them together, pretending not to notice how she kept glancing at him. Asterisk, inside the jacket, she could still feel his warmth lingering, and it surprised her how comforting it was. In her world, gestures always had strings attached, contracts, negotiations, partnerships, hidden agendas. But this was pure kindness, offered without expecting anything in return. She tried to remember the last time someone had given her something so simple and genuine. It had been years. Asterisk, she finally spoke again. "You really didn't have to do that." Asterisk, Daniel smiled faintly. "If I hadn't, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight, thinking about how cold you looked. Sometimes the little things make the biggest difference." Asterisk, his words echoed in her mind long after. She turned to look out the window, hiding her thoughts. She didn't tell him she was a CEO, didn't tell him she was returning from a late meeting where billion-dollar decisions had been discussed. She didn't tell him that her driver had canceled last minute, and she had stubbornly refused to call anyone else, determined to handle things on her own. She didn't tell him that her board would be horrified if they knew she was sitting on a public bus wearing a stranger's jacket. For once, she just wanted to be normal. Asterisk, the ride passed in quiet companionship. When her stop came, she hesitated before standing. She took off the jacket, trying to hand it back, but Daniel shook his head. Keep it. You'll need it.
Asterisk her.
Lips parted in surprise. But asterisk, no buts, he said, smiling kindly. You can always give it back if we run into each other again. Asterisk. She held the jacket closer, her eyes lingering on him. For some reason, she didn't want to argue. All right, she murmured, stepping off the bus. As the doors closed behind her, she turned once more to see him still sitting there, looking out the window with that quiet, unassuming presence. Something in her chest shifted, a feeling she couldn't name. Asterisk, back in her penthouse apartment that night, surrounded by luxury and silence, she hung the jacket over a chair. It looked out of place in her pristine, home-worn fabric, faint scent of motor oil, threads fraying at the cuffs, yet it felt more real than anything she owned. She touched it lightly, remembering his smile, the simplicity of his gesture. For the first time in years, she slept easily. Asterisk Daniel forgot about it quickly. Life was busy, and he wasn't the type to dwell on things. He woke up early, worked long hours at the shop, joked with his coworkers, went home to his modest apartment, and tried to make ends meet. He didn't know that the woman who had worn his jacket was sitting in corner offices, leading companies, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. To him, she was just someone who had needed help for a moment. Asterisk. But fate has a way of circling back. A week later, Daniel's boss called him into the office. There's a client coming in today, the boss said. Big contract, behave yourself. Yeah? Asterisk Daniel nodded, wiping grease from his hands, not thinking much of it. He wasn't usually involved with clients. He just fixed cars. But when the client walked in, he froze. It was her. The woman from the bus stop, asterisk, she was different now, dressed in a sleek tailored suit, hairstyled perfectly, presence commanding. Everyone in the room straightened when she entered, her reputation preceding her. But when her eyes met Daniel's, recognition flickered instantly. He saw it too, though it felt almost unreal. She smiled faintly, the same smile she had given that night, though now it carried something else, an acknowledgement. A secret between them. Asterisk Daniel stood frozen, his mind racing. He had given his jacket to a stranger, and that stranger was a CEO who held the fate of contracts and livelihoods in her hands. She didn't reveal anything then, but he could feel the weight of the moment. The story was only beginning. Asterisk. Daniel had never felt so out of place in his life, standing in the auto shop office with grease still clinging to his fingernails. He watched as the woman he had offered his jacket to a week ago entered with the kind of presence that made everyone else shrink back. The men in pressed suits hurried to shake her hand, his boss nearly stumbling over himself to look respectful. She carried herself like someone who never had to ask twice for anything, her confidence radiating without effort. And yet, when her eyes landed on him, it was as if for a split second, the walls dropped. Her expression softened, just slightly, like she remembered every detail of that freezing night. Asterisk Daniel tried to play it cool, though his pulse was racing. He quickly busied himself with a stack of papers on the desk, pretending not to notice her, but she noticed him. She always noticed asterisk. The meeting went on, her voice filling the room as she discussed numbers, projections, and contracts. Daniel barely understood half of it, but he couldn't help watching the way everyone hung on to her words. She wasn't just impressive, she was magnetic. The same woman who had shivered at a bus stop was now commanding respect from seasoned businessmen. It was hard to reconcile the two images, yet it made him realize that people are never just what they appear in a single moment. Asterisk, when the meeting ended, she lingered for a moment as others gathered their things. Then she walked over to him, quiet but deliberate. Daniel, right? She asked softly. Asterisk, he blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. You remembered? Asterisk, her lips curved into a smile that seemed almost private. Of course I did. You gave me your jacket. I don't forget things like that. Asterisk, his boss looked confused, staring between them, but Daniel just rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Glad it helped. Asterisk, she tilted her head, studying him. You're not going to ask me for it back? Asterisk, he chuckled. Asterisk, her eyes lingered on him for a beat longer, as though weighing something she wouldn't yet say. Then she simply nodded, leaving him more curious than ever. Asterisk, in the days that followed, she visited the shop more frequently. Officially, it was for the new contract her company was bringing in vehicles for. Maintenance, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that sometimes she found excuses just to be there. She'd step out of her sleek car in heels that clicked against the concrete, and all the guys in the shop would suddenly stand a little straighter. Yet no matter how busy she was, she always made time to exchange a few words with him. Asterisk, he didn't know why. He was just a mechanic. She was a CEO. Their worlds couldn't be more different. But every time she spoke to him, she looked at him, as though he wasn't just part of the background, as though his words mattered. That was rare. Asterisk, one afternoon, as he was tightening bolts under a car, he heard footsteps approach. He slid out on the dolly, wiping his hands on a rag, and found her standing there. Instead of the usual tailored suit, she was dressed casually: jeans, a sweater, hair tied back simply. She looked different, almost younger, and he couldn't stop staring. Asterisk, taking a break from the corner office. He teased lightly. Asterisk, she laughed softly, surprising him. It wasn't the polished laugh she gave during meetings. It was real, something like that. I thought maybe you'd let me buy you a coffee to say thank you properly for the other night. Asterisk, Daniel raised an eyebrow. You don't owe me anything. Asterisk, I know, she said, her eyes locking onto his. But I want to. Asterisk, he hesitated, then finally nodded. All right. But only if you let me pay for the second round. Asterisk. They ended up at a small cafe a few blocks away. Nothing fancy, just warm and comfortable. As she sat across from him, hands wrapped around a steaming mug, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. Without the corporate armor, she was just a woman. And he found himself wanting to know everything about her. Asterisk, they talked for hours. About childhood memories, about favorite foods, about the strangest things they'd ever seen. She told him about growing up in a modest neighborhood before climbing her way into the corporate world. He told her about his father teaching him how to fix cars in their garage. She admitted that sometimes she hated how lonely success could be. He admitted that sometimes he worried he'd never be more than just a mechanic. Asterisk, by the time they left, the sky was dark again. She pulled his jacket tighter around her as they walked, and he realized she had never returned it. He didn't mind seeing her where it felt right. Somehow, Asterisk, over the next weeks, they saw more of each other. Always quietly, without drawing attention. A stolen lunch here, a walk in the park there. She confided in him about pressures she never shared with anyone else: the backstabbing board members, the constant scrutiny, the endless weight of leadership. With him, she could let go of the mask. And Daniel found himself opening up to her, too, in ways he hadn't with anyone in years. Asterisk, of course, not everyone approved. Rumors started swirling in her company when people noticed the CEO disappearing for hours or spotted her near the auto shop. Whispers spread that she was distracted, that she was making reckless choices, but she ignored them. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Asterisk, one evening, they sat on a park bench, watching snowflakes fall under the glow of the lampposts. She leaned against his shoulder, her breath fogging in the cold. You know, she said softly, everyone in my world expects me to be untouchable. They see me as power, not as a person. But you. She paused, squeezing his hand. You just see me. That means more than you know. Asterisk, Daniel's chest tightened, emotions swirling. Maybe because I don't care about the CEO, I care about the woman who shivers at bus stops and drinks her coffee with too much sugar. Asterisk, she laughed quietly, eyes shining. Make it sound so simple? Maybe it is, he replied, but life is rarely that simple. As their bond deepened, challenges rose. Her board grew restless, questioning her decisions. Daniel's coworkers teased him, not believing someone like her would be interested in someone like him. The differences between their worlds loomed, larger every day, yet when they were together, none of that mattered. What mattered was the warmth of his jacket around her shoulders, the honesty in his voice, the way she made him feel like he was more than just his job. Asterisk, neither of them knew what the future held, but both of them knew one thing: that chance meeting at a bus stop had changed everything.